Welcome to Corporate Warrior, the podcast that brings you the best advice on how to improve your health, optimize performance, and maximize productivity. With your host, Lawrence Neal.
This podcast is brought to you by hituni.com. That's hituni.com. HitUni is an e-learning course provider specializing in high-intensity training for personal trainers and for people looking to learn how to apply the principles of HIT to their own training for best results. It comes highly recommended by Body by Science author Dr. Doug McGuff, Discover Strength CEO Luke Carlson, MedX Precision Fitness owner Blair Wilson, HIT expert Drew Bay, and the founder of Living La Vida Low Carb, Jimmy Moore. It was founded by author and high-intensity training master personal trainer Simon Shawcross. Simon has 15 years experience and has supervised over 15,000 workouts. Due to a combination of demand and a lack of quality in certification programs in the fields of high-intensity training, Simon and his team spent the last 3 years developing top-quality courses that will educate fitness professionals and participants to enable them to train individuals and themselves in the safest manner and produce best results. HitUni has been put together using knowledge from the very best minds in the field of exercise, including Skylar Tanner, James Steele, Dr. Doug McGuff, Drew Bay, John Little, Mike Mensa, Arthur Jones, Dr. Ellington Darden, and many more. The courses are delivered online through the website, where you can learn via a variety of multimedia materials at your own pace and convenience. The online video presentations are engaging and make learning fun. Online support and a discussion forum are provided to resolve any sticking points and enable you to share ideas and ask for help. Depending on whether you want to become a personal trainer, are already a personal trainer who wants to upskill, or if you're a keen HIT participant that is eager to learn more about how you can apply HIT to your own workouts for maximum benefit, there are several great value courses to choose from. I am personally partway through the PT course and I'm really enjoying it. I primarily wanted to do the course to learn more about how to apply HIT to my own training for better results. The courses are really easy to follow and each section is organized into bite-sized chunks that give you a real sense of achievement after you complete each one. To get your exclusive Corporate Warrior 10% discount on any course you purchase, simply head on over to hituni.com, that's hituni.com, and enter the coupon code CW10, that's CW and the number 10. So again, head on over to hituni.com, hituni.com, pick your course and enter the coupon code CW10. Thanks very much for your support. Hello, ladies and gents. This is Lawrence Neal, and welcome to another episode of Corporate Warrior, where it is my job to interview world-class experts on productivity in terms of exercise, lifestyle, and business to tease out and identify the specific workouts, the routines, the habits, the diets, the mindsets, the systems, books, and resources that you can use to significantly improve your effectiveness and efficiency in your everyday life. Guests include exercise scientists, serial entrepreneurs, New York Times best-selling authors, elite adventure racers, and everything in between. Today's guest is renowned high-intensity training personal trainer, David Landau. And you'll recognize that name because David has come on to Corporate Warrior before, and he now joins us for a second time after popular demand. After all, his interview is one of the most popular I've ever done and had the most in terms of comments on the website, which tells me a lot. This interview, we cover a lot of stuff. I actually used a lot of the questions and rants that followed the first interview to build the questions for this one. So I hope that I'm able to tease out a lot of stuff that you guys were keen to understand about his point of view. Just to give you a few highlights, David talks about his reasons for not submitting a manifesto to bodybyscience.net, his perspectives on the foundations and objectives of rational exercise. He elaborates on a quote by Bill Pell about how training to failure is like seeing how far you can stick an ice pick into your eye. And David also elaborates on how he manages the progress and recovery of his clients and how he keeps his clients motivated to perform at their best, which will be very interesting, I believe, for you high-intensity training fitness business people out there. And then after that, we get onto diet, and it's a really interesting point. He talks about actually around diet and how much food you actually need to eat from to support hypertrophy and muscular growth. And then we finish up on some philosophical points and some bonus questions, as I always do. For all of the show notes and links, they'll be in the usual place on corpwarrior.com, CORP warrior.com, and that will redirect you to 15minutecorporatewarrior.com. So without further ado, please enjoy this interesting interview with David Landau. Thanks for coming on again. I do really appreciate it. And I was just listening to our first interview actually earlier today, which was incredibly enlightening, actually listening to it for a second time. Now that I know so much more since we last spoke, and obviously I've carried on that learning process, what you said made more sense to me listening to it a second time round, if that makes sense. So that was quite enlightening, actually. So, right, let's do this. So, as you know, I sent you over a couple topics, which were kind of partly my own, partly your suggestions, and also the listeners. There's been a lot of questions submitted by listeners, which I actually felt like you answered in the first one. So I'm not going to go over too much of the same ground. I'll redirect those guys to the first interview we did. But my first question to you, David, is Dr. Doug McGuff recently put out an invitation on bodybyscience.net. He offered his audience the opportunity to write their own training manifesto. Now, I know what you're going to say, that it is, writing a training program for someone or putting down training recommendations is difficult because of the very prescriptive nature of it's all about, it's different for every individual. But is there anything are you going to contribute your own, I guess, manifesto onto his blog at some point? And if not, why not?
That's very difficult to write a manifesto because he has a basic system and they all subscribe to super slow style technique, which I've gotten away from in more recent years. Figuring out the foundations are far different than just moving at a slow speed. So if you actually combined all together a lot of my posts, if you can understand them, because I've always posted in kind of a riddle-like form, you could figure out a manifesto throughout all the posts I've made over the last few years on his website. To put a manifesto out is like giving somebody a baseball bat to beat you with. They all know where I stand on the topic of training. Like I said, they've read all the posts I've made, so I don't need any more lumps on my head from being hit by more baseball bats, but it doesn't really matter to me. The problem is that the foundations have changed over the years as far as my learning curve. If I were to have a discussion with me from about 10 years ago, we would have an argument, but I have learned over the years through my discussions and interactions with lots and lots of the folks out there that I've always stepped in the right direction. I've always looked for the truth of the matter. But now I understand the foundations are much more clear to me right now. And although I've always went in the direction of structure all my life. I've been doing this for 37 plus years and as an instructor/trainer. I basically, again, to be honest with you, the foundations that I have in my training are are somewhat different than those from the followers on Body by Science.
That's a real shame to hear, because I actually think that there's a lot, and I know a lot of people have I'm sure people reach out to you, but they certainly reach out to me, and they're very, very interested in your approach to training. And I appreciate there will be some people that will attack you, probably. There always is. But I think so many people would benefit, and including myself, from you writing a manifesto. And you're right, all the comments that you do leave, they are very, they're often quite cryptic and profound when you understand them, but frustrating when you don't. So I urge you to reconsider, but it's up to you at the end of the day.
we can go on to some of those topics, and I can explain them to you so you can understand it.
That makes sense, and that's actually the next question I was going to ask you. Was one of the things you mentioned was that you wanted to explain the foundations and objectives of rational, sane exercise with storyline to boot. The floor is yours. I'd love to hear you explain that from your perspective. That if you're happy to do that, that'd be great.
Well, obviously, the foundation of proper exercise is the human muscular structures and addressing the muscular structures. So you have to understand that muscles are force-producing engines. Therefore, you have to, in your workout procedures, have to find ways to gauge force, okay? So basically, in more recent years, I moved away from putting form over gauging force. You must first gauge the muscle and let the form follow. That's why some of the pre-prescribed speeds in exercise fail to deliver optimal results, because you're thinking about, I don't care what else is happening, you are thinking about the speed before addressing the muscle. So if you're thinking about going 10-10 or 5-5 or even 4-4 or whatever speed, it becomes the objective. The objective is to train the muscles. And if you train the muscles first, let the form follow after. Obviously, there's going to be exercises that require a little bit more tedious speeds, and points in the exercise that require you to gauge that more, so produce force against the machines. And remember today, Lawrence, is that machines today are made phenomenally safe. You almost have to try and hurt yourself on exercise equipment. So basically, the foundation is your muscles, not speed, not running from exercise to exercise. It's the muscles themselves. You must prioritize your muscles and let the form follow. Don't worry about speed. Worry about the muscles.
When you say gauge the muscles, like what I know what you mean about getting away from the speed, and I think I've been able to learn that in my experience training, and you know, I don't even think about the cadence so much. It's more about just being slow and under control, but it's not a long cadence whatsoever. But how? Because I think the audience were quite confused last time when you mentioned gauge the muscles. It wasn't clear to some people what that really meant. So how do you focus on that when you're training? What kind of mindset are you applying to that?
Let's say I'm doing a front grip pull down. I'm doing a pull down apparatus, or I'm doing a chin. Okay, for an example of a very strong movement, I basically will take the bar and start to pull and produce force as well as I can on a machine that won't hurt me. In other words, I am trying to produce force with a meaningful effort, whether it be 1 or 2 seconds. I don't even think about it for that matter, is produce force. In other words, okay, you must eventually, over time, you have to have enough weight to, in the first repetition, it has to get your attention. It must get your attention. You know you're encountering a load that's going to really put it's going to get the body's attention immediately, So basically, you're not, okay, I'm going to pull this down for 10 and then come up for 10. You want a meaningful load so you can produce force against the meaningful force and let the form follow afterwards. It's hard to see unless you see a video of me actually doing this or training somebody for that matter.
I think I get what you're saying. So there's other variables that have to be set right from the start, such as, like you say, a meaningful load. You know, if it's a very, very light load and you go to move it very quickly, that might not be so productive.
Well, an analogy to some of the slow speed training, they say, well, it's really hard. It's also hard work to pull a weighted sled across a 100-meter field. Afterwards, you're breathing hard, you're out of breath, you've spent all your body's reserves, but basically you performed an activity-based movement rather than addressing the muscles. You're trying to pull something from point A to point B. So basically, that's what happens in a lot of these routines. They're basically moving a load slowly. Yes, it is a demand on the body, but it runs away from the objective, which is to produce force against that particular load. I'm not saying jerk and yank the hell out of it. I'm saying produce a meaningful amount of force against it. And some exercises require, maybe a faster speed, some slower, because if you're doing 100-pound dumbbell pullover, you better slow down in the stretch position, because it'll yank your connective tissue out by the roots. So you got to be careful with some. Obviously, you got to be careful, but you got to put some effort into it first and let the form follow, like I said before. This is what I've learned over the last several years is I was depriving myself of optimal and my trainees of optimal results by putting them into a set predetermined speed of movement, which works okay, but it's not optimal.
Right, okay. One of the, I think one of the comments you left on my blog was, or I think it was my blog, you said that Bill Pell once told you, training to failure is like seeing how far you can stick an ice pick into your eye. What do you mean by that?
What did he mean by that?
Sorry, what did he mean
Basically,
by that?
He said it was taking exercise a bit too far, in my interpretation. Actually, I ran into Bill, and I was at the Earth Trade Show about 11 months ago in Los Angeles. And I'm walking down the street, and there's Bill Pearl and Gary Jones, Arthur Jones' son, and they say, "Hey, Dave, you want to join us for dinner?" I said, "No, I have plans, but I can come with you." So they wanted to go over to Jimmy John's Pizza, so I went over to Jimmy John's Pizza with them and sat with them, and we had a nice, comfortable, wonderful conversation. And I reminded Bill of that same thing, and he concurred. He said, "It's taking it a bit too far." Okay, let me explain it on my end. If you see somebody laying on the floor after a set, that's done something negative to you. Like I said, I think I mentioned it before, so-called carpet time, as they relate to it in the high-intensity industry, is not a desirable thing, okay? It's a nice ego boost. Look at what I did. I trained so hard, I'm on the floor. I was on the floor for 15 minutes after the workout. That may or may not be productive in a sense, in rational sense, that you've done something, you overwhelmed the body too much, and your protective mechanisms have been disturbed to the point that you're lying on the floor. You have to think about what puts you on the floor. As I told you before, probably in the previous conversation we had.
Correct, yeah.
I can put you on the floor with a baseball bat, and it's going to have the same effect. So you have to take a couple steps back and say, why am I killing myself this hard? Because if you ever go into mainstream gyms, there's a common thread between what you do, what I do, what the rest of the folks do. They all do it. Everybody does it, but they don't object. They don't have it as an objective. Everybody stimulates muscles. And you see optimal development in routines that have no way, shape, or form have anything to do with what we, quote-unquote, do.
Sure.
So what do they have in common that with us. Well, the bottom line, it's not their objective. Our objective is to merely stimulate. But somebody once said, and I'm not sure it was, they said it was Lee Haney on the site, but I'm not sure. I never heard it from Haney, but I heard it from somebody else. I don't recall who it was. But the idea in an exercise program is to stimulate, not annihilate, and that's what Bill Pearl basically was coming across. You don't have to kill yourself. Take a couple steps back and analyze that with uncommon sense, so to speak.
When you do, if you do end up bringing yourself into carpet time, as you said, what might the detrimental effects of that be? Does it just really impair your ability to recover, or can it actually result in a loss of muscle mass? Or what are the actual results of that you've seen in your experience?
Well, you have to think about that. You've seen it as well. You've read it about it. The Landau experience, to where basically people are beating up their bodies so bad that it's having almost a killing effect to your body. I mean, there's a fine line between stimulating and like I said, annihilating, and basically you're going into. Like I said, I've seen some of these situations in the past. I was at a super slow convention back in the 1990s where a young fellow by the name of Brian Gatewood, I believe at the time, he had a super slow facility with Tim Ryan. Tim Ryan's the guy you need to interview, by the way. I
recognize that name, yeah.
Awesome guy. I hope he's on your list.
Absolutely.
And they had an exhibition where he went through a workout fast and furious, and he ended up lying on the floor for about 20 minutes after. Again, common sense should tell you that there's something wrong there. I mean, there's obviously something wrong there. Look on a football field when they overexert a player. They're not going to keep him out there. They're going to put him on the sideline and give him oxygen and have him recover. So, I mean, if you want to lay on the floor after a workout and call it a productive thing, go beat yourself up. But in my opinion, my experience, and from what I've seen, it's not productive.
So, one thing we were talking about last time we spoke was stimulating the muscles versus annihilating them, which is obviously related to this. How do we make sure we're doing the former and not the latter? I mean, I know you say it's common sense, but not to everyone. So, is one set a failure? And then you also mentioned last time maybe a second set if you feel like it. And again, I appreciate this is very individual. But what is the difference between stimulating the muscles and annihilating them in practice?
Let's start with the concept of failure. Trained failure. If you've ever observed people trained to failure, so to speak, it represents itself differently across the board. You can watch one person literally train as hard and diligently, and that's the key, train hard and diligent. And you can watch them train as hard as possible, and they barely look like they're training. And on the other end, you can see somebody training look like they're on the point of getting ready to die.
That's true.
There's different reactions to training all out. The idea of failure, let's redefine that. Failure basically means you're failing, okay? That's a negative. It denotes a negative. I always say, be honest with yourself, train as hard and diligently as you can.
What does it mean to train diligently?
Be honest with yourself. Stick to what works for you best. Train as hard as you can. I'm not going to bark at you that, you can get more. No. Trust me, I'm me standing there enough, and I'm a motivator. I'll get you to if you stood in front of me yourself, my respect towards you because you've had me on now a second time. If you stood in front of me, you wouldn't have to say a word for me to train as hard as I could. The difference between what I do and what most of the a lot of the mainstream hit does, is they kind of to run to the next exercise as fast as they can. Instead of waiting for the body to recover a bit between the exercises themselves. And that's the difference, because everybody responds differently. Mm-hmm. And to run a person from machine to machine or exercise to exercise is defeating the purpose of training. You're training the muscle. You're not creating an event, a so-called cardiovascular event.
Yeah.
And that's what causes the body to, a lot of people to have that so-called carpet time. You don't want that. But if you want to do it, I'm not going to prevent you from doing it. Having experienced this for years, having done the so-called carpet time, I did those workouts, as I told you before. We were doing them in 1985. Matter of fact, I had a guy in from Israel that remembers the exact things we used to do. We did 11-minute workout, Nautilus training way back in 1985. We went from machine to machine. You got so adapted to it that there was no such thing as so-called carpet time. But all it made me better at was being better at going from machine to machine to machine.
Why is it, because I'm sure you're probably aware that in Doug's gym, Doug McGuff's gym, I'm not sure if he still advocates this, but certainly when he started it and during around the time that Body by Science was published, he had a lot of his participants doing that, so going from machine to machine with no rest in between. Again, I forget the logic. I believe it's to build up metabolic waste products or something of that nature, and the idea being to make the stimulus even more profound, which I'm assuming you disagree with. But why do you think it is that he does that, if what you're saying is that it serves no purpose?
Well, I say it serves no purpose. He probably disagrees with me on that. Basically, what we found back in 1985, and it was even written in an article that I have actually kept in my collection, that the so-called cardiovascular community, the aerobics community, whatever you want to call them, we were trying to prove a point that we could also get the heart rate up and maintain it throughout a Nautilus training circuit way back in 1985. But of course, it wasn't within their parameters, because he said you'd have to use the legs and locomotion to get the heart rate up. So we were wrong. But your heart doesn't really know what the source of that allows it to rise is from. It could be from drinking too many caffeinated energy drinks, for that matter. I mean, if you drank about 5 energy drinks, if you could survive it, you can get your heart rate up for quite a long time. The metabolic training was, I mean, if you look at the history of it, it was basically to prove a point that you weren't good enough to do Nautilus, and you need to do Nautilus training way back in the day, or you're not good enough, you need to address the heart muscle. The heart is the muscle too, blah, 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 and that. And then basically my research has indicated, I'm curious about what the truth is, but I've found out that it's unnecessary nor desirable to race your way through a circuit unless it's in a so-called, unless it's in your business model.
Right, okay. So one of the other things we spoke about last time was how you track progress and recovery with your trainees. And you said that you're big on variety and making sure that you change an aspect of the workout each time they train, and how rigorous you are at tracking every nuance in their performance. So, but obviously it goes to say that if that's what you're doing, then no workout will be the same as the one before it. So if that's the case, how do you pass apart recovery and understand if someone's making progress? How do you know with your trainees what to recommend, when they should come in next, or what resistance you're gonna put them on next, and that kind of thing?
There's a phrase I always use: it takes 2 to tango. And basically, if you're training somebody as a one-way street, you're doing them a disservice. Basically, when they come in, if they're intelligent enough to call Lawrence Neal to train with him, or if they're calling Doug McGuff, or they're calling Robert Francis to train with him, they're intelligent enough to have a say in the workout. So I can observe them and have them say, you know what, I'm not recovering after 2 days. I'm not recovering after 3 days. And guess what, Lawrence? They live there. They experience it. It basically, you're going to learn from them. If I apply a one-size-fits-all recovery mode to each person, I'm doing a disservice. So I'm always observing, and if I do change, I don't change the routine quite as often as you might think, but sometimes I'll go back to a similar routine to see how they perform. But I'm very good at tricking them to do better, if you understand what I mean. I have
Can you elaborate on that?
Instructional ploys that I use to trick them to do better. But the idea is, how do you find out the ideal recovery from the individual themselves, more or less? Yeah, that's where you find it. And if you don't allow them to have a say, you're doing them a disservice. They live there, okay? Maybe they're sick one day and they need an extra day to recover from being sick, or maybe the schedule gets in the way. A lot of factors involve how many days a week a person trains. Also, you'll see that people that recruit a low percentage of muscles could practically train on a daily basis without losing their recovery. And some people, if you train them once a week, some people recruit so much muscle that if we didn't know about a week, we'd be forced to invent it for their recovery time. So, it's an observation from my end, and it's feedback from theirs. So that's how you do it.
Just on that, David, have you had anyone who's, taken longer than a week to recover, or what's the most extreme case you've had with a trainee in terms of like the longest recovery?
Well, no, I've never had anybody take a week to recover, but I had a guy come in that trained at a high intensity place that he was told that he needed 10 days to recover. But when I trained him, I didn't find that to be the case. I think these long recovery times are too much. Recovery, something over 7 days a week, I never see it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I don't see everything. But in general, 2 workouts a week in general, and that's a complete generic, is 2 to 3 times a week can be done with complete, per se, recovery, whatever the hell recovery is supposed to mean. That's a crapshoot. Very difficult to define recovery. It's a lot easier to read about it, but when you experience it, it's a whole different ballgame.
Right, I think I get what you mean by that. I had to go and look at the definition of crapshoot before this interview. Because
roll the dice, that's all. I just don't know. When you think you know, you don't know. I mean...
Got it, yeah.
I could probably train, and people think I'm insane. That's all right, listeners. I'm insane, but I could probably get away myself with training 3 times a week. And I train pretty damn hard. But I work out twice a week right now. Right,
yeah. Okay, interesting. That's interesting insight. So when, I know, again, I get it, I'm assuming when you have a trainee come to you who just, I suppose, wants to improve their overall body composition and muscle mass, what workout do you generally start someone on? If you could give us like a protocol, number of exercises, type of exercises, that'd be interesting if you could elaborate on that.
I just had a gentleman that brought in his ex-wife with him to train. They trained in tandem because his recovery requires somebody to train in between his recovery, because if I were to run him through a workout, he would die on the spot. So you don't want to do that. But she came in and she started to tell me what she wanted in her routine. And when they start to talk, every word that comes out of their mouth goes into my files in my head. And I start to create a routine based on their desires, not based on my recommendations. Now, occasionally, obviously, there's not going to be a person that'll say, just take me through the general routine. And basically, it consists of probably not even six, I'm sorry, about eight to 10 generically exercises for a total body workout. But usually I can get them to talk to me about what they basically want to work on. And that basically what drives them to be motivated is listening to them 100%. After all, it's their bodies. It's not your body.
Got it.
So basically they define basically what they want. And that's basically how the routine comes into being, by listening to them.
Let's say they
want... Like I said before, if they're smart enough to come in, they're smart enough to have a say.
Sure, got it. I understand that. But let's say they want they want a general all-round workout. What would the specific exercises be in that list of 8 to 10 exercises for you?
Well, obviously, I don't have a squat rack. I have a leg press. I put them on a leg press, and I basically look at the responses there. I might give them one or two leg presses to get them into the groove, and probably a leg flexion or extension, leg curl, one of the two. If it's a woman, I usually do some abduction, inner thigh, outer hip. And then I go on to the upper body. I usually do a pull down, a couple overhead presses on the apparatus that I have. And I do maybe some arm curls and chest presses. Something generic to straighten in the bending around the arms for the upper body. Nothing specific. Again, probably, like I said, 8 is a really good start. And generally they train anywhere from, I'd say the minimum amount of exercise I give somebody is 7, and the maximum goes about 14 or 15 movements.
Wow. They must be, because I know that if I did 14 to 15 movements and I did that, no specific cadence, one set to failure, I'd be absolutely... I just think personally, I mean, maybe it's my lifestyle because I have a fairly stressful lifestyle. I just would be gassed by the end of that.
Well, that's specific to you. That would be your situation. And I certainly have people like that. That's why we're as low as maybe 7 movements. And some particular, because I gave them one more movement, probably kill them. Yeah. Sometimes if you do one extra movement, you might bite off a little bit more than you can chew. I remember one time that I decided I was going to get a little macho, and I decided to do so I had done a couple series of dumbbell pullovers. And I grabbed the 75-pounder to do an extra set, which I knew that I was on the cusp of biting off a little bit more than I could chew. And I tell people at the store, I said, that extra set almost killed me. It literally almost killed me. So you got to know when to say when, and obviously 6 or 7 movements for you would be ideal. And you live there, so you experience it. As long as you're not running from machine to machine, let your basketball take care of itself specifically. If you want to condition yourself for basketball, just get on that court and dribble the ball up and down the court. Sometimes
I might do as little as 3 large movements. Do you have clients that do that? Is that perfectly okay as well?
No, I don't. I'm not saying it's bad for you because I've never met you as far as physically. So I wouldn't do as little as 3. That's just me, because I'm interested in getting results from people, and accumulation of exercises is better than 3, but 3 obviously will maintain your muscle mass. I hope. I haven't seen you train, but I only wish you well on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because in Body by Science, Doug split goes from a big 5 to a 2-way and a 3-way split, and I found I made progress and had quite a bit of success with a 2-way split, which would sometimes be only 6 minutes, 7-minute workout once per week.
I don't even know what that means.
Sorry,
I trust you're doing okay for yourself.
Yeah, it's just
I'll be honest with you. When they talk about 3 or 2-way split, all I can think about is a banana split. I really don't know what that means, but it makes me hungry anyways. Think about it.
Well, I mean, sure, yeah. Well, it just means that you're splitting, you're reducing the volume of the workout, because the big 5
split routines back in the day used to mean that you were doing different body parts 4 to 5 workouts a week, but.
Yeah,
I don't know what they mean by that, but you can tell me that. I don't know.
Yeah, sure, no worries. Okay, cool. So one of your clients, Raymond Freiberger, I think that's how I'm saying that correctly.
He's no longer with me now.
Oh, right, okay. Well, he actually had a few questions, which I think actually you answered one of them, which was, who are your peers in high intensity training, and you mentioned a couple guys like Rob Francis and Doug Holland, etc. last time in the podcast. But what interested me is you mentioned that he had a 6-pound muscle gain one day. He came into you and you said he looked a little bigger, and you said, well, I've gained 6 pounds. And you said that you changed the basic cadence or changed something subtly to gauge his muscle or to elicit that response. Do you remember specifically how you changed his workout to give him that gain in muscle, or to provide that gain, trigger it? I know it's hard to join the dots. But
I believe he had trained by himself for a while, and basically I put him into, I believe this to be true, I gave more exercises than he normally might have done, and basically combined sets together on the machines that I have. Now, he has a nice genetic structure, so he had the propensity to gain that muscle tissue. He has a great little physique going on there. I don't know how he's doing now, but I enjoyed training him. Like I said one day, I Jesus Christ, you look bigger, dude. And he goes, yeah, I'm up about 6 pounds. I said, well, good for you. But basically, I didn't really ask him what he did before. I just went to work on him. I just do things. I give people more stimulus, more sets. I have machines that allow you to stimulate those muscles differently. And machines, weights, whatever it is, I try and get on your page. You're not getting on mine. I'm getting on yours. And if I can encourage you to train well, I will. It's like I told you 10,000 times before, it's all about them. It's not about you. So basically, it probably gave him more volume, Lawrence, and that may have made the difference.
That's very interesting.
I encouraged him to train really good too. I have a DNA full of motivation. I have a way to encourage people because I'm really good at that. I really know how to do those things, and I could be saying something during their workout and may not sound like I'm motivating them. Like I said, I use these very quirky instructional ploys to wow them into training better. So, that's what the importance of a trainer is, putting you in position to make yourself better, putting you in position to win, not putting you into a system like everybody else. Like I said, it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah, and that's really good advice because there's quite a few, well, I think a large proportion of my audience are either starting a high-intensity training fitness business or already have one. Certainly a lot of the questions submitted were from those types of people. So I'm really keen to ask you a few questions about that in a bit, actually. I just wanted to cover some other ones first. So when it comes to building muscle mass, which is obviously the desire of many a male and sometimes female. I had someone on the show who recommended that a good way to approach that would be to reduce body fat down to, say, if you're male, 8 to 11%, and then increase calories marginally every day by maybe 200-300 calories. And then if you start to gain fat, then adjust accordingly. Is that the kind of approach you take with your clients versus having them increase calories excessively, like some people might advocate?
Well, I don't come across that a lot. Fat loss, as I've stated before, is a 100% caloric intake. We used to, 30 years ago, or 30, 40 years ago, I used to think it was 50-50. Then it went to 60-40, then it went to 80-20, and then 90-10. Then I found out that activity/exercise or whatever you have in your lifestyle basically will be negated by the number of calories you intake. I tell people, you've eaten food long before you ever met me. You're interested in information on food, I can tell you, but your lifestyle is relative to your likes and dislikes. I am not to tell you how to change your diet or anything like that. If you want to reduce your body fat, like you said, we can go down with those little 100-calorie descends throughout the week. And the next week can go another 100 calories down or 50 calories, whatever it takes. But you got to gradually adapt. But again, these people have come in with food, their food desires and likes and dislikes long before they ever met me. So basically, it would be inconsiderate of me to shove them into a arbitrary diet program. It's calories in. And basically, they know that. But most people come in to look good and feel good. There used to be a place in New York, and I don't know if it still exists. It was clever. It was in Manhattan. It was called Ricky's Looking Good, Feeling Good, where you come in to look good and feel good. And if you don't, I got to change that rather quickly. So I don't get a lot of people that say, ask me what they need to eat. They basically get the idea when I first meet them. Remember, you develop your food habits long before you ever met me. The idea is to reduce the number of calories that you take in. If you need help in that, I can graph that out for you, and so that you can understand how many calories you do require to maintain your base weight and how to reduce it. I have a way to graph that. But I don't hardly have to do that. Most people do. I don't know what it is, but they don't come in if they come in for fat loss, they're told immediately that's it. It's their responsibility on their end to reduce the number of calories.
Okay. But I'll rephrase the question a little bit because let's say they've successfully done that. So they've reduced their body fat right down to, I don't know, sub 10%, 8 to 11%, something like that. But then they want to gain muscle mass, as much muscle mass as they possibly can. I know a lot of that is obviously subject to genetic traits and other things. What a lot of the experts I've had on the show say is to marginally, some of them I should say, is to marginally increase calories from then on. So, 100 calories a day, maybe something like that, and then track to see, okay, am I gaining more muscle or am I actually just gaining more body fat? And then obviously adjust accordingly. If you start gaining body fat, then cut back. Is that an intelligent approach to trying to gain more muscle mass?
No. Muscle and fat are diametrically opposite to each other. Basically, you could probably be on almost a starvation diet and still gain some. Let me rephrase that. I don't think it's necessary to add calories to gain muscle mass. Muscle mass is an entirely different thing. It's based on the stimulation and the combination of the strength training program that you're on, not your so-called intake of food. Somebody can convince you that adding calories is anabolic, so be it. I don't see it on my end. I'm not going to say they're wrong, right or wrong, but I just don't see it on my end. An advice was given many years ago to a very genius of a man I spoke to for many years. His name was Bob Sands. Bob Sands visited a legendary, classic physique guy by the name of Anthony Sansone. And he went to the legendary Sansone's gym. And he entered the gym, and he had a little bit of chubby weight on him at the time. And he says, "What do I do to lose my fat?" He says, "What's going to be my ideal weight?" And Sansone said, "Here, I'm going to prescribe you a program for you." Okay. He said, "And what I want you to do is get on this so-called reduction of calorie intake diet and follow my strength regimen, okay? But don't get on the scale. Do not get on the scale. Keep doing this and keep looking in the mirror. One day you look in the mirror and you look like where you want to be, then get on the scale and that'll be your ideal weight."
Right, okay. Okay.
Legendary Tony Sansone, one of the best physiques in the history of mankind. Perfect physique.
Interesting. Okay, but I don't understand how that answers the question around.
I'm just saying the adding calories to your diet to gain muscle mass, I don't agree with. Just pure and simple.
That's very interesting. So, the reason this is not adding up in my head is obviously because I've been conditioned from birth to think that bodybuilders must eat 8 meals a day or whatever it is. But what are you telling me that, like, even the likes of, Mike Menser, and I appreciate, Mike was probably at the peak of his career on some sort of performance enhancement drugs. But what are you telling me they ate, a moderate amount of calories, say 2,000, 2,500 calories a day, even when he was at his biggest in terms of muscle mass?
Let me give you an analogy on this, if I might.
Yeah, go for it.
All right.
Help me understand this.
You'll understand it real quickly once I give you this analogy. Basically, you have guys like you and me that can gain some muscle mass, but we can't be a Mike Menser or Arnold Schwarzenegger or Ronnie Coleman or Jay Cutler or whoever else has this tremendous amount of muscle mass, okay? Mm-hmm. But we have to create a strategy in order to optimize the amount of muscle mass we can truly gain. We have to optimize the strategy. I don't know it's so much with diet, but you have to understand we're all trying to optimize, which is a step in a great direction. If you can't be those guys, you attempt to be the best you can be. So you Lawrence Neal, must strategize. Mm-hmm. Plan your attack to gain muscle mass. And plan your attack to add or make sure that your body is as good as that 10% body fat can be, whatever that's supposed to mean. The same thing happens, unfortunately, no matter what these freaks do. They could look at a weight and they can gain muscle mass. It's not fair, okay? Do you remember going to school and there was this guy in class never studied for the test and got an A every time? Okay, you maybe, I don't know, maybe you're a genius, I don't know. But maybe you were struggling trying to get C's. But the idea was that Lawrence Neal was trying to figure out a strategy to optimize his grade, okay? So you devised a strategy how to study on a daily basis to optimize the grade that you possibly get in the particular subject that you're trying to get it in. And the same thing. Unfortunately, there are people that are basically have better recall than you and I. Recall in their brain doesn't mean we're not smart. And there's certain people that have better muscle recall. They could look at the weights and they particularly grow. They could basically eat. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, some of these people, there was a guy back in the day that trained on hot dogs and drank Coca-Cola because he worked for Coke. He drove a truck for the Coca-Cola company and he used to come on the bodybuilding stage and he had ripped up abs. The same thing you might hear from the bodybuilder I'm trying to think of. I'll think of him, but he also said, we never did any of that stuff. We ate whatever we wanted. That's the convenience of being a genetic freak of nature. And most people, unfortunately, follow as genetic freaks. But, I'm trying to think of the bodybuilder's name, but he told me, we never watched our diet at all. We were ripped all the time. Oh, Anibal Lopez, the great Anibal Lopez. Right. There's a guy you should interview too, Anibal Lopez.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've seen. I remember reading a couple of articles about the genetic freaks in the way of the whippet that was, I think, bred to be incredibly muscular. And they did the same with a huge cow, didn't they? And they deleted the myostatin gene or myostatin protein or whatever it's called. And it had obviously a profound effect on their musculature, and they looked like, Jay Cutler had been transformed into an animal. But it had nothing to do with their diet or anything like that. It was just genetic.
What I'm trying to say is, unfortunately, these guys have physical advantages beyond our wildest expectations. They could probably get away with eating that extra 100 calories, and they basically said, well, geez, Cutler's doing it, and Sergio Oliva, geez, he ate whatever the hell he wanted. You could be really caught up in how the freaks get the results, and you're thinking you can get the same thing by doing the same thing. And that's what happens in today's culture. Right. They always look at the right hand, and they never watch what the left hand is doing.
Yeah. So are you saying in effect that, I've seen him, I remember watching a YouTube video of Jay Cutler, stuff in his face, and he's standing there and he's being interviewed and he's just looking at the camera saying, I hate this. I find eating unenjoyable, and I don't enjoy it at all. And I'm thinking, oh, right, he must have to eat that many calories to sustain his body. But are you saying that he could cut those calories down to a reasonable number and still have the muscle mass that he has or had?
I really don't know enough about him as far as what he's been eating, what he ate.
Well, he eats probably 6,000, 7,000 calories a day.
Again, you're talking about freaks of nature that can get away with those things. You and I can't.
Yeah, no, but what I mean is, if he were to cut that in half, would it have an impact? Would he lose a lot of muscle mass? I mean, from what you're saying,
I really don't know. I really have no way of answering that, because basically there's more to it than just that. Basically, remember, when you have an industry, like you have professional football, and you have mixed martial arts, and you have bodybuilding and weightlifting. You have guys that want to win at all costs. So basically, they're doing things that you and I would never phantom doing. They're taking drugs that you and I would never phantom doing. So you just can't factor in diet alone. I really don't know enough about that. I know very little about drugs. All I know is, if you were to find out the percentage of people in regular bodybuilding that were taking drugs, that would be close to as 100% as you could possibly get without being. So,
No, that's a really
there's
important point.
factors beyond our understanding as far as what these things do.
Yeah. No, that's a good answer. I think you make a good point. It's easy to forget about the potency of some of that stuff. Let's talk a little bit about your business, if you don't mind, David. In terms of your approach to training people, I think that would be some real sort of valuable stuff for some of the listeners. When you have a trainee that first sort of walks through your door for the first time, do you mind sort of running us through the process that you go through in terms of your first conversation, your introduction, how you then plan their workouts and their training?
I'm not going to bore you with what I used to do, but I never bore them with what I used to do. Basically, I put them straight to work. There's not a lot of downtime as far as I don't want to bore them to death with any rhetoric or any extra conversation. They come in, I might have a couple questions for them, but then immediately I put them straight to work. And one thing that you do not hold back on is get them into the action as fast as it can so they can experience what a real workout is. You don't do a light little break-in workout based on the individual, but you put them right to work. So there's no so-called preliminary conversations or teachings or boring technical rhetoric or any of that stuff. I put them straight to the action, and basically what I'll do is start to modify what they do and explain to them what they need to do. Now, my approach is a little bit different, I think, Lawrence, than most in high intensity, because I want them to find out usually and when their last possible repetition in the set is. And usually if it's on a leg press, I have them go, and I can actually observe and see when that is. And basically what I'll do is to get them to feel the action as good as possible, I have them go into the middle of that leg press range, and I'll tell them just to hold it there isometrically and hang on to that particular point until they no longer can hold it, and then fight it every degree of the way down. I basically will do that. I have kind of morphed into that over the years, not arbitrarily doing anything. I allow them to develop their pattern of speed, which is distinct to them. And then what I do is I'll find out that I do a lot of isometric applications to their workouts so they can actually feel the action from the very first workout that they do.
Right, okay, good stuff. One of the things you've mentioned quite a few times is your ability to encourage and motivate trainees. And I can really see how what you do works way better than the typical instructions that a lot of ignorant personal trainers use to try and get results for their clients. What is it that you say or do specifically to encourage and motivate your trainees, if you can share that?
Oh, a lot of times I can relate it to my own workout. I says, I can't believe, what you just did there. I'll tell them, I said, you did something that I want to do. I promise myself, I'm going to remember what you did right there, because I'm going to try and get better at what you did so well. Really? Did I do it that well? Yeah, you did it that well. A lot of things. There was a woman that worked out so phenomenally I think it was about 6 weeks ago, I recall, that I said to her, you worked out so well that I'm going to stick around and do my own workout. That was so inspiring. You did so well. And this is the truth. So basically, you find out what they do good and encourage them and tell them, what you did there was phenomenal. I mean, really, really very inspiring to me. So basically, I really get motivated by watching them really challenge themselves. And there's little instructional ploys I'll use. I'll say, and if I have a couple people in tandem, I said, look at what he's doing there. And the other trainee will watch. I says, that is a phenomenal application. And he does something that you rarely see. So these are all things that are authentic, and then it encourages them to take it a bit further. Of course, again, the pace is relative in between sets. I'm not going to murder them immediately on the next exercise. Get your composure after the set. Make sure you're physiologically and psychologically ready for the next set. I have all the time in the world with you. I'm not backing you up. I don't have to be anywhere. I want you to do your best. I encourage you to do so.
Right, that's awesome. How are you been?
It's true, because basically their efforts are very inspirational to me myself. You think they think I'm lying. I take motivation from their workouts. I appreciate what they do. I mean, it's amazing sometimes to watch how good they do. So I never credit myself. Of course, this is one thing, Lawrence, that if you're a trainer and you're a purist, you'll do. Remember, the instruction is only as good as you. If I sound good to them, I always say that if I'm sounding good, if I really sound good, it's because you're good first before I can sound good. If I don't sound good, then I try, you have to make adjustments, obviously. But the reason why my instruction is so damn good is because of them, not because of me. They allow it to happen.
Right, okay. So do you ever have someone come in who's like really not very motivated? Is there anything you would do to, I guess I know you get a lot of the encouragement and stuff from the trainee, but is there anything you would do to try and get that person to become motivated or inspired, or do they just not hang around for very long?
I have to find out what they're all about. I have to learn about them. I have to learn about what their work, what inspires them, what motivates them. I had that more recently, but I fixed it with one of the trainees. He's a young guy, and he didn't seem too inspired. But we started to get on each other's page, and he's doing so well now that he really looks forward to working out. He really gets it. And, we have a lot of philosophical conversation with a lot of the trainees if I have time afterwards.
Yeah. How many sessions will you do a day? Is it always one-to-one, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's one-to-one. I probably do 6 or sometimes 6 to 8. Sometimes I probably have about 25 to 30 sessions a week. I don't do it all. I do some side business to augment it, but I do probably only about 30 workouts a week, somewhere in there. Sometimes more, sometimes less.
How many clients do you have?
Yeah, somewhere around. You're right around 20 or so, maybe 30. I don't even have a number in my head right now how many I have.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm working 6, sometimes 7 days a week because my office is right near where I live.
Yeah, and you have your own studio, I assume.
Yeah.
Your advanced exercise, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember correctly. So you've been, as we spoke about before, you've been doing this for a very, very long time. How is it? Because it's quite fascinating to me that you've managed to, you sound like you're still very motivated to do what you do. How is it that you personally stay motivated? Why is that? How have you managed to stay motivated through your career?
That's a good question. I often think about it. I always say this. I said I'm more excited about this stuff more now than ever before. I'm always seeking out what works. And if I have to go against my former premises, so be it. But it's an exciting adventure. I really, really, really love training the folks more now than ever because of my ability to do things better for them or help them better. And I guess it's in my DNA. I have a whole lot of fun with it. If any of the listeners had a chance to come down and train with me, like I said before, I wouldn't charge them a nickel, but I would make them take me out to eat afterwards and buy me drinks. But I'll be honest with you, the idea is to try and put somebody in position to achieve better. Okay, so if I sound controversial to the listeners, I'm only interested in what works. Like I said before, the guy 20 years ago sitting in a chair talking to you would have argued vociferously with the guy sitting in right now, would argue with me vociferously. You have to change based on your observations and experiences, okay? People that I argued with for years and years that were on the opposite side of the coin, okay? I learned from them in my interactions. If I didn't learn, I'd investigate what they did. I'd look at what they did. So, I mean, it's fun. It's fun. I never thought I'd be one of those guys that was a hit expert, so to speak. I never thought of that. I always wanted to be really good, but I never thought of myself being talked about in a rather high level with a lot of people. I have a storyline on that too.
Yeah, please do. If you care to elaborate, it'd be great.
Well, years ago, and this is not to brag. I wanted to get this story out for a long, long time. I met a guy back in 1984. His name was Bob Sands. And Bob Sands was a gentleman that owned gyms in Miami in the 1950s. And he originally graduated from Duke University with a master's in teaching mathematics. He was a math teacher. Subsequently, his real love was physical culture and bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. And he's a very clever, strange-looking guy, but I could see the strange guy was actually a genius. He's brilliant. Most people thought he was strange, but I saw through all that. I said, this guy's brilliant. I want to glean off of him. And he used to teach me the old style of lifting weights and things of that nature, along with the Nautilus training I did. And subsequently, he followed me very much for many years, and he actually went to the next place where I started training people, a gym where I started training people. He actually subsequently joined and got a membership there. And basically, going back to his days, he owned gyms. He hobnobbed with Steve Reeves, Reg Park, Steve Klasanen, and all the greatest mind bodybuilders of the day. All the weightlifters used to go to his gym in Miami. And it was really funny storylines about him and being with Reg Park and Steve Reeves. And somewhere about 22 years ago, he stopped me in the facility where I was training people, and he said, I need to talk to you. Let's go in this office. So we went back in the office. He said, I need to tell you something. He says, I've seen the best in bodybuilding history. I've seen Reeves. I've seen Park. I've seen Klasanen. I was with the same guy I was with Samson, Sig Klein. He said, you, young man, are the best mind and training I've ever seen. He said, don't let it go to your head. But I had to tell this story because a lot of people don't reveal me. But this guy I respected him as a freak of a genius. This guy was very, very smart. But when he told me that, he said, don't let it go to your head. I never have, but I had to tell the story.
No, that's a good story. How old were you when he told you that?
Well, I was obviously, 37 years old.
Okay. So you'd been a personal trainer for some time.
Well, I've been more or less. They used to call it, Lawrence. They used to call it an instructor back in the day, and used to instruct several people how to use exercise and Nautilus equipment way back when. I cut my teeth on the programs that we used to do at the YMCA's back in Ohio and Pennsylvania. So that's where I cut my teeth. I was known as the Nautilus guy way back when.
Okay. So how is it, I think you've probably hinted at this, but how is it that you've made a name for yourself? Like what, because you are, like you said, you are known as a hit expert worldwide. So what's, because obviously you're not, from what I can see, apart from your website and Doug's, bodybyscience.net, you're not crazy, marketing yourself all over the web. So how is it? How is it just word of mouth over the years that, has built up your reputation, or is there something else?
I have a real passion for the industry. And I make it a habit of trying to visit as many people in the industry as possible.
Right.
Unfortunately, I can't visit a lot of people. I'd like to see many more people, and as time opens up for me, I hope to do that. But I've been and seen a bunch of people in this industry, many people in this industry. So I guess from interacting with the top people in HIT, I met Darden right around Ellington Darden way back around 1980. I hung out with Jones in his latter years. I used to go to his house.
That's great stories.
This is Arthur Jones. A good friend of mine is Jim Flanagan, who was former general manager of Nautilus Sports Medical Industries. I hung out with a legendary Nautilus guy by the name of Joe Mullen. I met him 33 years ago or so. The top bodybuilders I've been friendly with, I know Bill Pearl personally, and I know a bunch of them off the top of my head. I've met several of them. Most importantly was Bill Pearl. I just like to be involved with the industry, and I've gone to many of the annual conventions. I met many people through many of the Super Slug conventions, and basically gotten around. And I've even been to the National Strength and Conditioning Association annual convention. I've been to many of them. So I guess sometimes, you meet so many people, maybe you might make a friend or two out of that, and it kind of snowballs.
Yeah. Do you have any networking tips, like anything that you do in particular that you could share with the listeners when you go to events like these?
No, it's more for me is seeing the other side, so to speak. I hope to go to URSA this October, where they have this March in Orlando.
What's the event called? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Huh?
The event that you're going to, what's it called?
URSA.
Right, how do you spell that?
Oh, God. International IHRSA, I believe.
Oh, that's fine. I'll find it.
Yeah, it's an annual fitness convention. You want to see all the equipment manufacturers and everything else that everybody else is doing. So I really basically do it because I want to see what's going on in the industry and where the industry's going and what the industry's about.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that club industry trade show also.
Okay.
I've been to that, and I've been to going to those for well over 20 years, annual conventions. Also, the AOBS dinner, I recommend people to go to that so they can see another side of the industry and hobnob with old-time weightlifters and bodybuilders. AOBS dinner.
Okay.
Association Old Time Barbell and Strongman dinner. And
phone's going.
that's basically what I do.
All right, okay. I just thought, actually, I'd be really interested to hear, what are your thoughts about ARX Fit or X-Force machines? Have you had access to those at all?
What was the first one you mentioned?
ARX Fit?
That's the ARX you said?
Sorry, yeah, ARX, yeah. I'm pronouncing it wrong.
I think I've tried that before, but remember, you're the one that drives the machine. When the machine leans on you and drives you,
Something like that. Yeah,
I'm
uses
not
your
a
own
fan
resistance
of that.
against. Okay.
Huh?
Sorry, yeah, I was just confirming what you said. Yeah.
The ARX, yeah, I don't like these electronically driven machines but actually, I have to say that there was one that escapes my mind that was actually good. If I could afford to buy it, I would. I forget what they were called. And there was one, I tried, but the other ones that you feel like they're grinding away at you, like you're pushing on a drill press. Now, what was the other one you mentioned?
X-Force?
The problem with X-Force, and sorry X-Force fans, the problem with it, and I haven't used it. If they've improved it, then it remains open with me. But it's a step in the right direction, but 40% negatives on some people may or may not be enough. And I'm all for high intensity. So if X-Force open up clubs here in this country, I'll be all for them, but not optimal because I'm a purist. I want the person to be able to dictate rather than the machine dictate to the person.
Okay. Cool. Okay, let's. I want to get onto some sort of rapid fire questions, but the answers don't have to be rapid fire. Last time we spoke, I asked you what you changed your mind about in the last year, and you talked about how it became very apparent to you that the strength and conditioning in sports was ruining players rather than helping them. Since we last spoke, what else have you changed your mind about in the last? So that would be within the last sort of 6 months, if anything, in terms of health and fitness or diet.
I haven't really. Basically, I'm changing all the time. I'm basically getting my foundations a little more sound. And what I told you in more recent months, I've articulated a little bit better. Remember, it's addressing the muscle and not the speed of movement and not the pace between machines, okay? But I've been clamoring about this for years, but I'm starting to articulate it a little bit better. It takes me a while to figure this stuff out. But the idea is address the muscle. Forget about speeds. You'll define your speed based on you, okay? But the idea is to address the muscles and don't worry about an arbitrary speed. Speed of movement became popular, and I'll tell you why, and it's an ironic twist if you're interested in the story of why speed became prominent in exercise. The origins of slow movement started with York Barbell when they first started back in 1927. And with York Barbell, in their programming way back when, they told you to relatively go slow, okay? Now, it's interesting, there's some sidelights. There's been many people recommending slow movement since, or even before. I'm sure I've tracked it, I just don't recall it, but even before 1927. But they were recommending it. So basically what happened was, in 1962, Bob Hoffman wrote a book called Functional Isometric Contraction. In one of the latter chapters of the book, it recommended a speed, I believe it's called MCMM, or muscle control with measured movement. And basically what it was, Lawrence, was a 10-10 speed protocol. You would lift the weight for 10 and rest for 10 and then lower the weight for 10. Or even they morphed to 5 based on the length of the movement. So they were experimenting with 10-10 speeds and 5-5 speeds per se back in the early 1960s. But what happened from 1962 to 1980? Nothing, because they didn't see anything out of it. It waned. When I spoke to the great Tommy Kono, an Olympic world class Olympic weightlifter, gold medal winner, and I spoke to national weightlifting champion Bill March at a dinner that I went to several years ago. I asked them about it, and they said they recalled it, but they didn't try it too much. They were more in the isometric training at the time. It was more of a passing thing for them to try something that Bob recommended, Bob Hoffman. So subsequently, basically what happened is somehow, in my personal experience, this is true, Lawrence, is when I was at a Nautilus club in 1980, the recommended speed, if you don't recall, if you've not been told, was 2 seconds to lift the weight and 4 seconds to lower the weight.
Yeah.
Make a note on that. I'm going to come back to that. Okay. But this manager at this club came out and she was saying, well, they're not doing that at Nautilus anymore. They're doing 10 seconds up and 10 seconds down. We looked at her if she was whacked out of her mind. Well, subsequently found out that was instituted by Ken Hutchins in something called Super Slow, the Ultimate Exercise Protocol. But again, to make a long story short, we tried it, and we tried it for years. And basically, because I had a decent physique, I was able to maintain my muscle mass on it. But others went from conventional to 10-10, and you listeners can disagree with me, but I'm telling you the truth. I saw muscle loss on more than a few occasions. But what I've learned, again, is address the muscle, not the speed. And going back to 2-4, since speed of movement was a Nautilus training protocol, 2-4 was more of an accident, not by design. The 2-4 protocol was merely in a chapter in the original Nautilus book written in 1980 that when Darden suggested only based on a negative aspect, a positive lifting motion, a negative lowering motion. If it takes 2 seconds to lift the weight, for example, this was an example, it should take 4 seconds to lower it. Well, Lawrence, that morphed into the ideal speed that you should use on the Nautilus equipment. And it proliferated worldwide for millions of people that were training on the Nautilus equipment. So what was supposed to be an example of just an example turned into the cardinal rule of training on Nautilus.
Right.
I thought that was exciting to you, Lawrence.
It was quite exciting. I guess I'm not massively passionate as you are about the history of exercise, but I think my listeners will be, David.
Well, no, 2-4 was the given protocol at the time.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to Hutchins on the phone, he said, when I initially spoke to him, some years later, which was about 1993, I think, he says, we have improved upon that. And I fell into that. But, again, I've moved on. I have the idea is to address the muscle and forget about the speed. You can't be a form policeman. You can't say slow down and do this and do that. You're keeping people from producing force. And you want people to produce a meaningful amount of force at least. There's a fine line between producing force and hurting yourself. But you'll be hard-pressed, Lawrence. Seriously, I know I'm going off on tangents there. You'll be hard-pressed to see people injuring themselves in the gym unless they're doing the sport of CrossFit.
Yeah. Well, when you exercise currently, when you work out, when you're addressing the muscle, what is your cadence? I know you're not focused on cadence, but what is your cadence? What is your organic cadence if you're just when you're training? I know
different exercises require different cadences. Sometimes I'll speed up the movement just to get that last rep down. I'll just pull it as hard as I can, and usually it takes maybe a second or 2 seconds down because I'm using my last bit of effort. So I really don't know. I mean, if I have a 100-pound dumbbell in my hand doing dumbbell pullovers and the connective tissue towards the stretch position, I mean, I go full range with these things, so I got to be very slow with those. But otherwise, with particular actions, usually a couple of seconds either way.
Okay, interesting. Okay, a couple more questions. What are you really not very good at, would you say? A strange
What am I
question.
not really good at? For example.
What do you mean?
No, I'll tell you what I'm not really good at. I'm the ultimate procrastinator.
Really?
Let's put it that way. I guess you can sum it up. I wait till the last minute to do something I could have done like a while ago, and it's a lot easier to do than when I first anticipated it. So to the listeners out there, if you need to get something done, do it yesterday. Don't wait and get it done.
What do you tend to do when you're procrastinating? Like, what is your hobbies and things that distract you from what you feel like you should be doing?
What distracts me? I watch a lot of TV. I'm watch a lot of TV. I'm TV. I watch the Fox News Network a lot, and at night, everybody's favorite Fox News.
Okay.
I mean, I put a lot into watching TV. I probably could be more productive in doing other things, but I do a lot of out of positive sense. I do a lot of reading. A lot of the things that I collect and historical aspects of physical fitness, I do read a lot of this stuff. So what I've learned, as you know, my theme is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. Yeah, because last time we spoke, you were talking about how your studio is like your laboratory, and that's where you're doing a lot of your learning is from your trainees. I suppose that's still the case, but last time we spoke, you weren't reading so much, so you're reading a lot more now, are you? Is that sort of something you've changed?
No, I get in the mood to read when I feel like it. Some of the people that disagree with me, and they'll point their perspectives out. That's a great motivation to read up on some of the things I have forgotten about. The problem is I don't have excellent recall. There are so many things I've forgotten about in exercise and health that I have to reread some of these things to brush up on them.
That's fair.
A lot of people accuse me of being just too old school and I don't know what's new. Trust me, if you studied the old timers in exercise physiology and you did the investigation, they are the most concerned, freaked out perfectionists you ever read about. There are several that did far more investigation on human anatomy and physiology than you could ever suspect.
What individuals specifically? You probably mentioned them in the last podcast, but I'd love to put those in the show notes if there's anyone that comes to mind on that.
Well, there was a guy did a lot of I believe it was Ernst. I have to pull out my library. There's a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, you can always ping me an email afterwards.
A guy that was a medical maverick back in the day that wrote some books on philosophy, medicine, and physiology and exercise by the name of Peter J. Steinkron. Morris Fishbein, the former American Medical Association president from the 1920s and 30s, wrote Fads and Quackery and Healing. I was formerly a member of the Lehigh Valley Committee Against Fraud, so I always read up on what was the fraudulent health things in the industry. The great old timers in bodybuilding were very, very, very clever. Alan Calvert, Earl Lederman, George Jowett, Sigmund Klein. Tony Sansone was excellent. If you read about the equipment of Gustav Zander, Max Herz, there is a history that is beyond your wildest understandings. And many of the people that don't read this history are repeating it right now, the bad parts of it.
Right.
And if you don't do your own research on history, you're doomed to repeat the same mistakes these guys found.
David, what would someone who doesn't like you say about you?
Well, they always say I don't know what I'm talking about. To them, I say I never have done what I was taught. I'm still trying to get better. Of course, they don't like me until they meet me in person. That's usually a different thing because then they see the real freaked out nut that they didn't anticipate. Like I said, I know all the cast of characters out there. I know, except for the English contingent, many of the cast of characters that you have interviewed, I've known. I visited Adam Zickerman. I know Bill DeSimone, Tim Ryan, Robert Francis. Knew McGuff from the very first time he came to the first Super Slug convention. Ken Hutchins I met, way back in 1980, 81. He kicked me out of his seminar at Nautilus and turned me on to the great Joe Mullen. I mean, there's quite a number of people that actually many that, like I said, you've interviewed. And I know, I mean, that's getting around and seeing these people and seeing what makes them tick. I haven't seen everybody, but I like to see it. I like to try to.
Yeah. Tell me something that's true that almost nobody agrees with you on in the HIIT community, bar the cadence thing.
Oh, the so-called cardiovascular, the perceived cardiovascular benefits from circuit training.
I see.
It's all in one nutshell. Heart disease is not a disease related to performance on the equipment. It's a pathology. It exists in spite of your ability to go through a circuit. It will not improve your cardiovascular health one iota. So a lot of people subscribe to that. I did the investigation and found out by accident of fate. It wasn't even designed for me. I wasn't even looking for this, and I found a landmark book on it, and I read it cover to cover, called The Exercise Myth by Henry Solomon. And then I did my own investigation and found out that heart disease is a pathology just like any other. There's not much you can do. You can manage it yourself. You can do the best you can, eat as healthy as you can, and exercise a little bit. But I doubt if it does a damn lick of good. But psychologically, it might help you. So a lot of people disagree with me on that. And in the mainstream, they disagree with me on everything. You read my website, I go against every mainstream practice there is based on my observation, experience, and research and investigation.
One of the things that Doug explores in Body by Science is the stroke volume. And I believe he states that the stroke volume improves with resistance exercise. So your heart's ability to pump more blood with each beat around the body, as one, I guess, adaptation. Do you agree with that? Do you have a view on that at all, David?
Whatever that's supposed to mean, your stroke volume, whether it affects you when you're resting or anything like that, is pure. To me, it's speculation.
Okay.
Listen, you're allowed to believe what you want. I'm curious about what it is. And if you disagree with me because you have an emotional attachment to something, trust me, I wish my contentions were wrong. I wish I was wrong about vast majority of everything. I'd be so happy that I was wrong about these things. I mean, I'd be thrilled if everybody got optimal results in doing the programming that they do. And I wished everybody well and high intent. I wish it was the greatest things, but you have to address each individual case as you see fit. If you think you can cure disease through exercise, it's a pure fantasy. I wish you could, but you can't.
Okay. is there anything that you believe to be true, but you can't prove it?
Everything I just said. Everything I just told you throughout the entire thing. I can't prove it. It's self-evident to me, though.
Yeah.
Based on my investigation, it's self-evident. I can't prove it, okay? I can tell you right now, off the beaten trail, that as a parallel to this, that man has nothing to do with the climate, not one iota, okay? As a parallel to this, say. But there's no way I can prove it. But it's self-evident to me, based on my investigation, that it's a pure fantasy that man has one little microcosm, nothing has anything to do with changing the climate. If you understand the foundation of the matter, it's a complete joke to think that man has anything to do with it. So I can't prove that either, but I just basically abide by the foundations. And that's basically the best proof I can come up with, is the foundation of climate change is that big, nasty, ugly star in the sky called the sun. And the same thing, it's your muscles. Address your muscles when you strength train. Forget about cadence. Throw the cadence out. Get to work. Train hard, diligent, be honest with yourself, and then shut down and let your body recover based on your particular needs, not anybody else's suggestions.
I like that. It was a very, very different answer. I like the fact that we threw a bit of climate change in there.
Well, it's just basically what it is the foundation is, the foundation of the muscular skeleton. It's the muscles of the foundation. And if you address, things outside, and if you make this foundation a speed of movement, then you're subject to the speed of movement. You become better at the speed of movement. So you have to understand the foundation and then branch off of that.
Yeah.
But if you make it, I'm trying to find the ideal speed, there is no such ideal speed. It's individual.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, last time we spoke, you talked about how you were potentially putting a book together. Is that coming along? Have you made any progress on that at all, or has that been shelved?
Well, what happened was my hard drive broke down, so I got a new computer here. Most of which I had is still happening. I was working with a client's wife of mine, and we stopped doing it. We were going to put we're going to put things in the book form, and I basically been busy with other things going on in my life right now. So that's not out of question. I've always promised that for years. I had somebody begging me on the phone the other day, you need to write a book. You need to put this stuff in book form. And I said, well, if I did, who the hell would buy the son of a bitch?
Oh, you'd be surprised. I think there'd be plenty of people buying that. Good stuff. Right. So for all the listeners, if you want to get the resources, the links, everything that's mentioned on this podcast, in this interview, I should say, head on over to corpwarrior.com, CORPWARRIOR.com, and that'll redirect you to 15minutecorporawarrior.com, which is the main homepage. David, what's the best way for people to contact you these days?
You can call me on the phone if they wanted to. They can call me on the phone if they wanted to. I'm not hiding anything. Just email me privately. I'll give you the phone number. I have nothing to hide. You want to come down and train? That's another issue. But I'm very open. I love people in high intensity, even though some of them don't like me. They have to learn like I did and do their own investigation and get out of the so-called cult of the matter and figure things out for themselves. You have to know, in order to conduct the orchestra, like Mike Mentzer once said, you have to turn your back upon the crowd. And that's what I do. I basically go to work and I don't pay attention to anybody else, and I stay focused on individual situations rather than worrying about what such and such says or anything like that. If I felt like what they did was better, I'd be doing it yesterday. But again, contact me xarchives@aol.com. Yeah, I love interacting with people with high intensity. Just don't get angry with me because I said something you don't disagree with. Apply it to your own life and figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, second that. And I'll put that email in the post as well so people can contact you, David. And hopefully you get lots of interesting emails from people. Not too many.
Well, I love Corp Warrior. It allows me to come on and get these straighten out a few things. Did a lot of homework on this stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you, David. I appreciate the compliment, and I really appreciate you coming back on the show, of course. But yeah, we'll get this live as quickly as possible, get it up on the website, and I think this is an interesting one. I think there's some gems in this one, so I'm hoping that'll be well received. But
it's really hard. Because when I say things, address the muscle, it's really hard unless I see a person and I could actually really physically really improve them. I know I can. I have that confidence and experience to know I can put people in position to get a better workout if they're doing it by themselves or they're basically reading out of the book.
I hear you, David, and I think hopefully the last one drove some visitors to you, and hopefully this will drive even more people to come and see how you do it, because I think you're right. I think it's so hard to articulate some of this stuff, and from what I've heard, you're an excellent trainer, and I think I just hope that people will, come to see you in the flesh and actually experience that firsthand. I would certainly love to if I was ever in your area. So.
Yeah, I'll be at Earths in Orlando, most likely. The annual convention, I'll probably go up there for a few days. So if anybody's going, they can contact and let me know. We can meet up and have something to eat.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure I put that in the notes, David, if you don't mind. Cool. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much again for coming on, and we'll talk soon, no doubt.
You got it, brother.
Cheers, David. All the best.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This podcast is brought to you by hituni.com. That's hituni.com. HitUni is an e-learning course provider specializing in high-intensity training for personal trainers and for people looking to learn how to apply the principles of HIIT to their own training for best results. It comes highly recommended by Body by Science author Dr. Doug McGuff, Discover Strength CEO Luke Carlson, MedX Precision Fitness owner Blair Wilson, HIIT expert Drew Bay, and the founder of Living La Vida Low Carb, Jimmy Moore. It was founded by author and high-intensity training master personal trainer Simon Shawcross. Simon has 15 years experience and has supervised over 15,000 workouts. Due to a combination of demand and a lack of quality in certification programs in the fields of high-intensity training, Simon and his team spent the last 3 years developing top-quality courses that will educate fitness professionals and participants to enable them to train individuals and themselves in the safest manner and produce best results. HitUni has been put together using knowledge from the very best minds in the field of exercise, including Skylar Tanner, James Steele, Dr. Doug McGuff, Drew Bay, John Little, Mike Mensa, Arthur Jones, Dr. Ellington Darden, and many more. The courses are delivered online through the website, where you can learn via a variety of multimedia materials at your own pace and convenience. The online video presentations are engaging and make learning fun. Online support and a discussion forum are provided to resolve any sticking points and enable you to share ideas and ask for help. Depending on whether you want to become a personal trainer, are already a personal trainer who wants to upskill, or if you're a keen HIIT participant that is eager to learn more about how you can apply HIIT to your own workouts for maximum benefit, there are several great value courses to choose from. I am personally partway through the PT course and I'm really enjoying it. I primarily wanted to do the course to learn more about how to apply HIIT to my own training for better results. The courses are really easy to follow and each section is organized into bite-sized chunks that give you a real sense of achievement after you complete each one. To get your exclusive Corporate Warrior 10% discount on any course you purchase, simply head on over to hituni.com, that's hituni.com, and enter the coupon code CW10, that's CW and the number 10. So again, head on over to hituni.com, 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 pick your course and enter the coupon code CW10. Thanks very much for your support.